I had this menopause symptom that no one else I have ever talked to has had. Under 50% of women feel comfortable asking their doctors about sexual health. I did not know until I was 50 years old that the female clitoris is the only part of anatomy that has no function other than pleasure.
I thought there was only room for one podcast in the family. Look who's got a podcast now.
I know, the women must speak.
Schuyler Grant is a world-renowned yoga teacher, mother of my 3 beautiful daughters, and my better 3/4. She shares some big news on this week's podcast. Get ready for some honest conversations that illuminate what's really true about women's health.
It's a podcast about women's health and hormones, and specifically around sex.
Get the rechargeable batteries going.
I got together with 3 super smart women. I learned a lot.
Conversations like the ones that you're having are very important because this is how intersubjective reality gets sorted out.
Whatever small part I can do for empowering everyone's daughters and granddaughters, I'm all in.
All right.
All right.
I thought there was only room for one podcast in the family, but look who's got a podcast now.
I know, the women must speak.
Old Mom Jean's got a podcast.
I do.
Okay, hold on. And the name of the next new Commune podcast is...
Oh, that's much more upbeat than mine.
Oh, come on.
No, it's not about digestion and elimination, I swear. Though we could get into that because people, the only thing that people like to talk about more than their poop is, it's a podcast about women's health and hormones, and specifically around sex, which is the thing that women like to talk about most.
Yeah.
I got together with 3 super smart women. Jolene Brighton, who's an endocrinologist and sexologist, appropriately, which is really, if I were to go back to school, I could definitely go into sexology because if you don't do a lot of it, you can learn about a lot of it.
Oh, yeah. It's like an oncologist. You don't have to have had cancer to be an expert.
Right.
Yeah.
Precisely.
Right. A sexpert.
We know a lot of sexperts who don't actually have that much sex. Not throwing out any names out there. But
that's true.
Anyway, so there's Jolene, who is amazing and super saucy and spicy, as well as being really smart. And Marisa Snyder, who is a women's health expert and doctor. And Rosie Acosta, who's a real good old friend of ours, and she's a teacher and author. And we got together for 2 really, really long days and had 8 extended conversations across a whole bunch of different topics relating to sex and hormones. And it was awesome. It's really different than sitting down and having an interview with one person because there was a vibe. We really got to know each other, and we're all different, coming from pretty different places, but definitely aligned on how much disinformation, lack of information there is about women's bodies and sex and hormones. And it was really good. I mean, I learned a lot. I was in the position of sort of being the every woman who got to learn a lot in the process. It was really cool.
Yeah. Well, also your experience with perimenopause and Perimenopause. There was a fairy tale.
It was I was so married during my menopause.
Yeah, Perimenopause, Tyler Perimenopause. It was, relatively non-eventful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of like a soldier through it person, and not, as you well know, not terrifically sensitive in most ways. And that's just sort of been the way my
clitoris works. No, just kidding. No.
TMI, Krasno.
Yeah.
Though we do get into that in the podcast, but you're just going to have to listen to get the details.
Get the rechargeable batteries going, Wellington.
For my toy?
Yeah, I don't know.
Never mind. I'm moving on. Number 1, generally, your perimenopause and menopause is a lot like your mom's often. And my mom registered nothing. She actually was like, oh, I don't know. One day I think I didn't have a period anymore. There was nothing happened. She also said that there was 0 pain during childbirth, and she was totally full of shit about that. But it's also often related to how intense your menstrual cramps are. Like if you have really, really strong PMS, it will tend to indicate that that kind of hormonal fluctuation on a monthly basis will indicate kind of the protracted nature of that hormonal big flux. And I didn't really have super strong PMS. I mean, I had the regular, but I also happened to go through menopause just before the conversation burst onto the scene.
Right.
And so I wasn't paying attention in the way that women do now, which is one of the really, really incredible things about this blowing open of the conversation is that probably symptoms that I was experiencing, sort of mood stuff, I would say. I mean, kind of like a low-grade depression. But again, like I soldiered through it, so I just kind of went on, and like brain fog for sure. I would never have occurred to me at 48, 50 that those symptoms would have had anything to do with menopause. Like it would never have occurred to me.
You had brain fog back then?
Who? What?
You what? I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I am more foggy brained, I would say. I mean, we do joke about my dementia in this family. It's not very nice, but we do.
I don't remember that.
Oh, good.
I remember mostly that the house smelled like soy sauce.
Yeah, I was talking to Micah, our youngest daughter,
who
about
ordered the
this
Peking
yesterday.
duck again?
Yeah, okay, so I had this menopause symptom that no one else I have ever talked to has had. So I am a unicorn. For like 2 years at least, I sweat at night, not super profusely, but definitely had night sweats. But the worst part was that the night sweats smelled like soy sauce. So in the morning, our youngest, who was like 9, who's still in her snuggly years, she would come down in the morning for her snuggles, and she just had to hold her nose because she was not into Chinese food in the morning.
She'd get wrapped in a pancake. Like, what's that?
Mushu porker.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's 16 now, and we went to a dinner with 3 of her friends and all of our moms, and immediately the conversation turned to menopause.
Of course.
And the girls were like, oh. And then they said that even though they were like, we don't need to talk about this anymore, we know so much about menopause. I was like, this is amazing. These 16-year-olds are oversaturated on menopause. Yeah. But they also said that they've been schooling all of their boys in their group of boyfriends about what menopause is.
Mm. Yeah. Do you think they have the vocabulary to actually explain it well?
I think they have enough vocabulary. Yeah. I mean, I think there were a bunch of boys in their group that didn't even know that menopause existed. And so they had to explain, like, first of all, just explain that there were periods
that it didn't
happen
to men. We'll start there.
That was a real shocker to them that they weren't going to get a period and then it was going to stop.
It's called menopause. I don't get it.
There's been a tremendous deluge of information in the last couple of years about women's health. And as a product of that information and your interest, then you actually got on the HRT.
I did. So I was completely I guess you could say a victim or a reactionary to the Women's Health Initiative from the 90s, which if any listeners don't know what that is, there was a big upending of using hormone therapy for women. And there was a study, I think it came out of Stanford or Yale, that basically studied a not huge cohort of women, and mostly in their 60s and into their 70s, who were taking an equine-based estrogen. And like a non-bioidentical hormone. And there was a big uptick in breast cancer in this group. And
not a big, very, very significant, well, very, very small, but it was enough to stop it.
It was a significant enough uptick in the rates of breast cancer primarily, and then some other knock-on bad effects. And so that created a whole lot of press, and hormones were more or less taken off the market for women. And I definitely, I'm inclined not to partake of any kind of drug intervention. I mean, I'm kind of a hippie that way. And that also just dovetailed very much with my worldview of like non-interventionism. Menopause is natural, just like anything else. And why would you try and stop it? And that's crazy. And of course, like trying to do something about it is going to lead to some other bad effect, even if you have some good effects. And I was prescribed progesterone and estrogen when I was like 48. And it just sat in my cabinet for 4 or 5 years. My gynecologist would be like, are you doing this yet? You know, I'm looking at your levels. And I was like, nope, I'm a hippie. And then I really had my mind changed mostly by doing those hormone retreats with Dr. Sarah Zoll Gottfried. And she just is so smart and knew so much and just actually opened my mind to all of the other benefits like bone density and cardiovascular health and dementia and all of these other things. And I don't have a history of breast cancer in my family. So
yeah, and you would get on it earlier in your kind of closer to the onset instead of at 63, which was the
so
WHI average.
The science around starting hormones, 10 years postmenopausal is debatable. And some people, there are many, many docs who say it's fine. You just monitor. Even if you have breast cancer, and which would be contraindicated, or breast cancer in your family, or even a personal history of breast cancer, which would be generally contraindicated. There are many doctors who are now saying it's not a hard no. You just monitor. But I started late. I mean, I was like 52 or 53 before I started on the estrogen and progesterone. And I wish I'd started earlier, quite frankly. I wish I'd known more.
I'm surprised that you were prescribed because, as I understand it, prescriptions for HRT are generally based on symptoms and not levels, because levels vary day to day. So hormone panels and saliva tests don't really say much about whether or not, you need HRT or not. But your symptoms were, relatively, on the grand scheme of things, like not particularly significant. So I'm curious why they were prescribed.
This was Dr. Suzanne Gilbert-Glens, who was really, she was way ahead of a lot of doctors in, 2019, way before this busted out on the scene. And I was having a lot of insomnia, which I totally didn't peg to anything hormonal. My complaints was sleep related. And then I was having night sweats, but I was just like, I was saying, yeah, I've got night sweats. It's not that bad, whatever. I've got like super sweaty sheets and I just have to sponge off in the morning, big deal. And she was like, yeah, but you don't have to. And if you're not sleeping well, like that's a huge deal. And she tried to convince me that the poor sleep was related. And I just didn't believe her, really. I was like, nah. I'm just having insomnia. I'm gonna soldier through.
And was that, you were really dissuaded by the black box warning, or more just your general outlook towards interventionism?
No, not the black box warning. It was like having heard about the Women's Health Initiative, and that it was like.
But that was the output of that study.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was just a general feeling in the air that it was dangerous. It was just, it felt dangerous, and I'm just a low intervention person.
Right.
Yeah. And I guess I self-identify that way.
So then finally you were inclined to get the transdermal patch.
So estrogen patch and the progesterone pill, both super low dose. And then, I should have then. Oh, no. No, not that one. That has a bird on it. Okay, wait, I need a better one. Ready? And then. Pellet in my ass.
Whoa.
But not up the butt, in the side of the ass. So I have a bunch of friends who have gotten a testosterone pellet, and that gets implanted in your butt cheek. And then it is a very, very slow release over 4 months. And they all say it's the best thing they've ever done. And then I got really curious about doing it I thought I would do it for the podcast, and then I could report back as an N of 1 experiment on the effects of like adding testosterone, because my testosterone is very low. I mean, it's supposed to be low, postmenopausal, but it's quite low, even lower than it should be at my age and stage. And then I couldn't find anyone to do it. It was like it's actually very tricky to find someone to give women.
It would have to be off label.
It's off label and definitely not covered by insurance and all of that, which is crazy because women have testosterone like just like they have other sex hormones and men have estrogen and all these things. It's just actually preposterous, but there you go. I don't feel much when substances don't seem like they do much to me. I feel sort of like...
Yeah, including heroes doses of acid and psilocybin.
Yeah, that's a whole other conversation. Anyway, I finally found someone to give me a pellet. That was only like 3 weeks ago, and so it takes a little while for that to kick in, but it feels good. I do feel like there's an energy boost.
Now, why would a woman like you need a testosterone pellet?
Because obviously I want my dick to get bigger. No, sorry. No, why would a woman like me want a testosterone pellet? Energy, ability to build muscle, can enhance your libido, doesn't necessarily. The reason not to do the pellet is because once it's in there for 4 months. And some women like have bad side effects. Some people feel super ragey. Some get a little hirsute. Yes.
Secondary male sexual characteristics.
Yes, like hair on the face. And the bigger one that I've heard people dislike is hair loss.
And is the pellet inclusive of testosterone, progesterone, and
yes.
estradiol? Or
no, not progesterone, but estrogen.
Yeah.
I did try the testosterone gel, which is the way that women generally take testosterone as they get them. You can get testosterone pretty easily. You just have to pay for it. And there are lots of HRT services online, and you could just order testosterone, and then you take 1/10 of the dose of what men would take. I felt nothing. Literally, I was like, this is just a waste of money and having to remember one more thing in my day. So I did that for like 3 months, felt nothing. So I just bagged. And then it was interesting but I have been doing the estrogen patch for 3 or 4 years now. And when he tested my estrogen, it seemed as if I wasn't really absorbing it, though I was absorbing the progesterone, which I take orally. And so he was like, you probably just aren't absorbing very well transdermally. Some women don't as well. And so he put the estrogen, because I am such a thick-skinned wench. Anyway, he put the estrogen in with the testosterone pellet, but I haven't gotten those tests back yet. So I don't know. It will be very interesting to see if my estrogen levels are also
Have you ever worn the CGM while also getting the HRT and then compare and contrast glucose levels?
Wow, that would be so interesting. No, I wish I had. Yes.
Yeah.
Because low estrogen is related to lowering my metabolic function for sure.
Yeah. Well, just as you stop producing estradiol, you become more insulin resistant. So your blood glucose would go up. Same with testosterone, as can also increase insulin sensitivity. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious if
that would be very interesting.
Blood glucose would be lower.
Yeah, on HRT.
On the HRT.
Yeah, I would have had to have put that CGM on.
Well, you could just start over.
No, thank you.
Come on. Do it for science.
Nah.
There's a lot happening at the policy level too around women's health. Basically, vaginal estrogen now is OTC, in some areas, I believe. Vaginal estrogen didn't really have some of the same risk factors, supposed risk factors as transdermal estrogen or pellets or all the other things that we were talking about, because it stays locally, but it's primarily it's more for sexual function, yes, pain during sex, etc. So that's been made more available, and then the black box warning got removed from HRT more broadly. Mm-hmm. And some of our friends that we've worked with on the Luminescence shows were very central to those public hearings that were, Kelly Casperson, for example, was very central to some of the reportage at the hearings that led to that decision. So that's been something that's been
it's a win for sure.
Yeah, very, very positive. The FDA also just approved this drug. It just came across my Instagram feed. It's called a DI, I believe. And it's got some fancy longer name, but I think that the public facing name is something I still can't pronounce. but I think it's ADDYII or something. And it is specifically targeted for like hypoactive sexual women postmenopausal.
Really?
So
I
to
did not
basically
know about
upgrade libido. It's not a hormone. It's a drug. And in some ways it's being like marketed like female Viagra, but it's not.
You sure it's not just ecstasy?
No, it's not.
MDMA
And yeah, it's
repackaged.
just been approved.
Huh.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what the uptake is, but watch out, 50, 60-year-old men.
cougar
Here we
time.
coming. They're coming for you. So, I mean, obviously, so much of, research, and this has been talked about a lot, but it has been done, on men and for men, and then, by extension, dosages are prescribed for men.
Male bodies,
Male bodies. But this product, even though the mechanism is very, very, very different than male Viagra, which is more about nitrous oxide and blood flow, et cetera.
Yeah, I'd be really curious to know what the pathway is.
Yeah, actually, I have it here somewhere if we really wanted to know. ADI, first FDA drug approved for low desire in women. Works on neurotransmitters, not hormones. Must be taken nightly, not as needed. Takes 8 weeks to show effects. So start now, not for performance. Bad news. Major alcohol interaction, risk of fainting, severe low blood pressure. So no sips for you.
No sips. I think I'd rather have sips and no sex. Sips, sex.
Sips or sex. But anyways, that's
fainting before sex. That's very, very demure.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's so interesting, though. So it's the brain. Well, I mean, we do know that for women, sex is mostly in the head. The biggest sensual organ for women is their brain.
So if I rub your head?
Yes. Neck massages are really good foreplay.
That'll be enough?
No, I mean, women it's like men can just basically, get a boner almost any time. Let's just be honest.
Well, come on now.
All right. Maybe not any time after 30, but for men, sexual arousal can really just happen from visual stimulus.
There's massive erectile dysfunction issues. Broadband. Here's a question that comes up on the internet from time to time, which is, women have been around for 250,000 years, and there was never no HRT, right? And so why now do we need, bioidentical estradiol, for women to cope, with changing hormones?
I would say there's kind of two pieces to that answer. From my layperson's research into this, the symptoms that women experience now are worse than they were historically. And this is very difficult to really analyze because, of course, there are not like very good records on this. I do know that what one's experience of menopause symptoms is often tied to underlying health. And the healthier you go into your menopause years, like the healthier you are going into pregnancy or anything else, the easier your time with that hormonal transition generally is. Like if you're just in better shape, physically, metabolically, emotionally, it's generally an easier transition for you. I think in modern times, in the same way that we're in an epidemic of chronic disease in all forms, cardiovascular, metabolic, neurodegenerative, all of those things, I also think the symptoms around menopause track with that. That being said, I also think that there's that big piece of women's experience being completely just denied, and anything that has anything to do with a woman's vagina was just like icky and, not talked about and secret and, red tinted, in every culture. I mean, whatever the word for clitoris is, like membre honteux, like shameful member. I mean, women's issues around anything to do with women's.
You don't think it's just that women and humans more generally are living beyond their evolutionary design?
I definitely think a lot of this has to do with the lens finally being cast on women's experience and women's health. There's no doubt that it's a perspective thing. I think it's a two-hander.
I mean, listen, here we are. I'm 100% glad that we're doing it. I'm just more philosophically musing a little bit here. And it's not just related to menopause, for example. I think, there's a lot of argument out there that like the chronic disease epidemic, there's a lot of lifestyle inputs, but a lot of it happens like cancers, for example, because we're just living so much longer.
For sure.
And DNA eventually malfunctions and produces cells that don't communicate with other ones, and then they metastasize, and all of a sudden, we have cancer. So, it's very funny. Like, this is like Trump is very interesting. He's wrong just about everything, but there's like a kernel of truth in some of the things that he says, and then he just misinterprets them. So one of his great arguments has been against exercise, right? Because he believes that humans have a finite amount of heartbeats. No, it's not energy, it's heartbeats.
Actual heartbeats. Yeah.
And so he must have read that somewhere. Someone said that to him. And so he's like, I'm not going to exercise because I only have a finite amount of heartbeats. And then, I was interested in it, and I was like, I'm going to look that up. And it is true, actually, that mammals have about 800 million heartbeats, and it completely depends upon volume to surface area. So, for example, like an elephant's heart rate is super, super low because it doesn't have to it's easier for it to keep itself warm, where like a mouse's heartbeat is super, super high, and its metabolism is very, very high because it has a very low volume to surface area, and it has a very, very short lifespan. So for a mouse to have 800 million heartbeats, it just takes like a couple of years, but like an elephant has a very extended lifespan because his heart is so then I was like, I'm going to map that onto humans and see how the average human, how long does it take to have 800 million heartbeats in the average human? And it was 28 years.
Yeah.
And I was like,
it's much younger.
I was like, that's interesting because 28 is about how long we lived for a very, very long time on average on the Serengeti. Now, I know that number was skewed because of, infant mortality and maternal mortality, but it was just an interesting number.
And predation. I mean, wasn't like the human.
It was like we weren't getting eaten by wildebeest all the time. So, but yes, infection and all these other things. And now we have, about 3 to 4x
what we should be living.
Of heartbeats, right? Between 2.4 to 3 billion, right, heartbeats over an average lifetime. And a lot of that is because we have developed, we have, a surfeit of calories available to us. There's no more predation. We generally don't get killed by, infectious diseases or tuberculosis or cholera or dysentery or typhoid or all this. Sanitation played a huge role in it. Dialysis, insulin, vaccines, et cetera, go down the line. We've created these potentially sort of artificially long lives. And of course, now everyone's like, chasing escape velocity and, 160-year age limits.
Only the grandmother should get escape velocity. That's just all I'm going to say about it.
Anyways, I think it's just outside of women's health, it's an interesting
misinterpretation of something that has a kernel of truth. I get it.
Well, no, and it's just also, or just to look at it like, are we just really outliving what we are designed for? And now we're like scrambling around to try to figure that out.
Patch it up. Patch up a leaky house.
I mean, like, I just look at like the amount of radiation and chemotherapy, that my dad has had for 7 years, treatment after treatment after treatment, to keep him alive. And of course, I want him to be alive, but with a relatively poor to mediocre quality of life. And so, these are just some of the trade-offs, that I think about more philosophically when it comes to medicine and science and what it is to be human.
Well, I do think, before we talk about something else, I do think for anybody who doesn't know about the grandmother hypothesis, it's a really good one to quickly touch upon. So there has been this big question in studying the human animal as to why there is menopause. Why would we have menopause? And the grandmother hypothesis is that besides just, if women just kept having babies forever, they would die sooner because their body wouldn't be able, they would probably eventually die in childbirth or die of an infection related to childbirth. So it's actually enables women to live longer, to stop procreating. But also in many, not all, but many indigenous tribes that are studied in a singular household, if there's a household that has an older man in it, the children suffer. The children are deprived of calories. And in households where there is a grandmother, the children actually thrive more. And then just culturally, that there is like a whole other subset of women who are not saddled with raising their own children, but then that can then forage and caretake and, be the ballast, the undergirding for the whole culture. Totally makes sense.
Totally makes sense. Yeah, Mindy has a new book, which I haven't read yet, but it's called Age Like a Girl.
Age Like a Girl. Yeah, go Mindy Pels. She's freaking awesome.
You'll have to bring her on
Yes,
the new
Luminescence podcast. Yeah, I'd love to have Mindy on. She's amazing. And the thing, what's really inspiring me for these conversations, because there's so many incredible podcasts out there, women's health podcasts out there. I'm personally most interested right now in teasing out the difference between common and natural. Meaning like as it should be in human physiology or human psychology. There are many, many women's issues specifically for this first season around sex and hormones. Everything from, sexual pleasure and what does my vagina look like to all of the changes during midlife that are common, that many, many women experience. 10% of women on average experience pain during sex. So that is somewhat common, but it is not normal.
Yeah.
It's not natural. So like, what is that difference? And if something is normal, okay, let's talk about it. What do vaginas look like? What's normal in the way a vagina looks? Let's talk about normalcy versus like culturally what seems like normal, but is actually abnormal. I don't know. Let's like smell, like vaginal smells. There are like common vaginal smells, but they are not normal. Like it's not a good thing just because it's common. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And like really starting to like flesh that out in all different kinds of ways.
What would be a common but not normal vaginal smell?
Oh, like kind of like a fishy odor, sort of trope of like a woman's vagina smelling fishy. That's not normal. That's an indication that there's an overgrowth of bacteria. Your microbiome is unbalanced if you have an unpleasant smell to your vagina, something is not right. But it's super normal. I think that a lot of women, because we normalize things, take it as okay. And so really learning to parse the difference between what's common and what's normal.
Yeah, sometimes I've thought about that as the difference between culture and nature, where it's like, for example, we often say, well, it's, totally human nature to be, self-centered and egotistical because we need to take care of ourselves first. That's actually a misunderstanding. That's a cultural understanding of how we live in the West, but that is actually not our nature. Our nature is actually to be communal.
Totally.
So anyways, yeah.
Yes, that's a more highbrow. Yes,
yeah, well, I'm a more highbrow motherfucker. Yeah. Whoa.
And then the other part is just like in this more specific to the moment that we're living in politically, societally, the digital ecosphere we're all swimming in, like trying to figure out what's true or truer than not, because really finding out what's actually true is maybe impossible, but parsing through different points of view, different quote unquote facts, various facts, and really trying to like talk to the smartest people I know and get closer to the truth, because it's really hard. I mean, it's really hard to figure out what to believe.
Yeah.
I find it hard. I mean, I've been really, really challenged in this Maha moment because so much of the underpinning of these questions that have been stirred up are really close to my worldview and my beliefs about health and flourishing and all of those things. And then I find so many of the answers so off base, but being asked questions is a great, I mean, it's great to stir up questions.
Yeah, critical thinking and discernment are important and potentially lost skills, because what we've long relied on is consensus. And by consensus, I really mean intersubjective agreement or intersubjective truth. It's very hard to find objective truth, and it's not always scientific to do that. I mean, there may be some objective truths out there, like the things that exist without human observation, gravity or something, the speed of light. But other than that, science just needs to be open to new evidence as it presents itself. Now, there is a very, very good method for discerning, what we can agree on, the scientific method. And there's, obviously experiment and observation and hypothesis modulation and peer review, et cetera, to the point where there is like some degree of consensus. And when we have that cooperation and consensus, we can accomplish a tremendous amount as a society. That is what my worry is now, is that we are so fractured from an intersubjective truth perspective, is that we're not really going to accomplish anything because we're in a post-truth reality.
World. Yeah.
And so this is why conversations like the ones that you're having are very important, because this is how intersubjective reality gets sorted out through a multiplicity of different opinions. It's just how nature works, through a multiplicity of different genes. Nature selects for the best of them, right? So out of a multiplicity and a diversity of ideas, which comes from a diversity of people, nature would quite logically select for the best ideas. And this is why I think these kinds of conversations are very important. So I applaud your efforts.
They do studies on women and their doctors, and something like it's under 50% of women feel comfortable asking their doctors especially about sexual health. 20% of women believe that they will get good information from their doctors. Those are pretty poor stats. So it really does mean that I think it's much better to get your information from a wide circle of experts. I do believe in expertise. I believe that we should be listening to people who've spent a good portion of their life studying any particular method, getting a good diverse group of experts, and then deciding what's true for you is really, in this day and age, the only way forward.
Yeah. So to close then, what can you tell our girls that you feel is tremendously important that you were never told about women's health or women's sexual health?
Being incredibly curious, being way more curious than I was as a young person. I grew up in such an open household, but also felt pretty kind of narrowed around conversations and inquiry around sexuality and my body. I did not know that anatomically, the female clitoris extended like all through the vagina and is actually homologous to the male penis. Male and female anatomy is basically the same. Women have a penis on the inside of their body. We all start female. And then the hormone bath in utero makes boys. So it's that sex organ that becomes a penis eventually. It all starts as a
chromosomal difference.
There is a chromosomal difference, but just anatomically, in the zygote, it all starts female, and then yes, there is the chromosomal difference, but actually just anatomically until 6 weeks or something. I don't actually know what the week is. You're trying to tell me my
penis was a clit?
It's actually a vagina on the outside. Yes, I am telling you that. But what that means is that women have this whole anatomy inside that basically maps kind of like a penis, and their clitoris is the head of the penis. The other amazing thing about the clitoris, which I did not know until I was 50 years old, is that the female clitoris, unlike the head of a man's penis, is the only part of anatomy that is designed purely for pleasure, has no function other than pleasure. Men have to pee out of their end of the head of their penis. So the only thing, so we have
pure
this
erogenous tissue.
Pure erogenous tissue with hundreds of thousands of nerve endings. Anyway,
yeah. There's erogenous tissue in your nose.
There is
your nose.
There's erectile tissue in my nose. I was really just getting off right there. No, so I don't know. I mean, I didn't know much. I was pretty in the dark about all of that stuff, and
So you're trying to say that the one thing that you're trying to tell Micah is that her clit is a penis.
Well, she She's pretty ballsy.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, I think that's
guess
great.
I think the main thing is just like,
I'm sort of teasing.
it's
just,
kind of, it's myth
but
busting.
certainly our girls are growing up in a completely different information environment, right?
Yeah.
They're just, they know so much more for better and
for
worse
Yeah.
than we did as kids. And particularly as it relates to female reproductive health, that's got to be a really good thing.
Yeah, that's a really good thing in that regard. Just in like feeling entitled to knowledge and pleasure. I don't think any of our girls don't think that they deserve to have a good sex life, that they don't deserve to be treated as well in the workplace as men, even if they see the disparities and they see pay disparities and they see women being dismissed, they feel like they should be. I do think that there is like, and I do think all of those expectations, cultural expectations and personal expectations layer on themselves. I mean, it's all part and parcel of, it's such a trite word, but like actually feeling empowered, like really positively empowered. Whatever small part I can do for empowering everyone's daughters and granddaughters, I'm all in.
All right, there's room for 2 podcasts in the house. All
Yeah,
right.
now we're going to be dueling for views, so you better be watching my podcast, bitches.
No way. Ready?
Thank you. Thank you. No, really.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. For more of my weekly musings, along with ad-free episodes and live stream conversations, head over to my Substack at jeffkrasno.substack.com. I also want to let you know about our course platform over on Commune, which contains over 3,000 lessons and practices from the world's leading integrative medicine doctors, health experts, and yoga, fitness, and mindfulness teachers. It's a living library for holistic well-being, and you can try it for free for 14 days at onecommune.com/try commune. As a reminder, the audio version of my new book, Good Stress, is available on Audible, and you can listen to it for free as part of your premium Spotify membership. And if you prefer the old school analog option, well, you can pick up a dusty old scroll at goodstress.com and get over $900 worth of bonus courses from some of my biggest influences, including Dr. Mark Hyman, Dr. Zach Bush, and Dr. Gabor Mate. As always, feel free to reach out to me with comments, questions, or criticism of the constructive variety at jeffk@onecommune.com. Okay, that's all from the Commune for today. My name is Jeff Krasno, and I am here for you.